started a list for you.
You did?
Most of the movies suck. Real
List
list.
Black out of the 1%.
The movies suck.
Crack the whip on these movies.
I got a few I can think of off the top of my head.
Let's get started. My name is Chris Gore from Film Threat. I am a white male, and for those of you blind, I look strikingly like Ryan Gosling with a full face tattoo of Brad Pitt on my face, so I am doubly handsome. I am excited that you are all here for why 99% of movies today are garbage. It's going to be a very exciting panel. We have a truly diverse panel, which to me, true diversity means diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. And this here is a safe space for people who have different ideas. I am a fan of everyone here and their YouTube channels and have been watching many of you for years. I'm excited that they're here with me. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we will get to the bottom of this question. Let's kick it off. Gary, I hand it to you.
All right. Well, I haven't had time to think of some fun introduction. So my name is Gary B. Clark. I come from Nerderotic. I fully identify as being in a completely different timeline than this one. Thank you.
Well, I got mine.
Oh, you got your mind.
I'm Alan Ing, editor-in-chief at Film Threat. I'm also the co-host of the Film Threat livecast.
Woo! Show!
Yeah. Nice to look at me.
I just realized it's like you got the white guys and the diversity over here. Hi guys, I'm Anna. I'm that Star Wars girl. You can find me everywhere on the internet says that Star Wars girl. And I got here an hour ago and it took me like 10 years to get this stupid badge, but I'm here.
Right. I'm Dante, or some of you know me as Cancel Dante of Verbal Riot, also contributing writer for Film Threat, and yeah, I'm excited now.
Ollie, I'm a last minute sub. Latino slant, Midnight Seja Español. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm ecstatic all of you are here because I've watched you all on YouTube for years. Dante just launched his channel, Verbal Riot.
Finally!
Subscribe to Verbal Riot. He literally just launched his channel like a couple weeks ago.
It's a little controversial sometimes, but I'm a techie there.
But look, we have, maybe some of you begun to notice some things happening in Hollywood. And that is that a lot of movies suck. And someone in the hall had a really good question. Gio, I just met you. Where are you? Had a really good question. What are the 1% of movies that don't suck? What is the thing that they all have in common? And I'll tell you what they have in common. They stand the test of time. These movies, there's 1% of movies that have been released this year, and we'll be talking about those movies in 10 years, in 20 years. There are movies we still talk about. We're still talking about Blade Runner. We're still talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. We're still talking about Ghostbusters. No, not 2016. The original Ghostbusters, okay? So, Jaws, another great film. Why are we still talking about Jaws? These are the 1% of movies that stand the test of time. And that to me is the mark of a great film. And movies have sucked for different reasons in different eras. I think now we have noticed that the political landscape and forces that are conspiring to divide people, not only in this country, but in fandom. And I will just say that we've been warned about this in the past. There is someone you may know about. Some may call him by horrible names, a fascist. Ming the Merciless is the foe of Flash Gordon. And what Ming the Merciless did is kept the kingdoms of Mongo fighting amongst each other as a way to distract from the fact that he was the true villain. Something similar might be happening today. And with that setup, I want to throw it out to the panel. And I'll not only be the moderator, I might throw in my 2 cents here and there, but I want to ask the panel, answering that question and what your thoughts are about why 99% of movies today suck. I'm going to kick it off with Gary, and then we're going to go down the line. Everybody get a chance to talk.
Try to keep it brief. All right. The reason, well, think about what Chris was just saying, the timeless film, and how we were getting fewer and fewer as time goes on, right? So how many Star Wars, you know, it's a classic, but there's always something you remember about a film that you connected with, and not because somebody looked like you, because someone is human like you. For me, that's like True Romance. I love that film. You know, I consider that a classic. We're just not even getting those. We're not even getting the little good indie films, or they're getting much harder to find because they're getting drowned out by corporatism. So the foundation of why 99% of films suck right now is the corporatism and risk-averse policy that is the death of creativity. And it's also part of the agenda that I will always talk about that is definitely there in Hollywood, whether people want to realize it or not. And I will freely speak as a centrist independent my entire life. Grew up in California my entire life, recently left. Because there's certain things I can recognize, and when I started recognizing this with, Patient Zero was Ghostbusters 2016, which was the fan baiting marketing, which is now, that's a term now, but when we were bringing it up, at the time, we were racist, we were sexist, we were nist, we were a phobe. I heard that crap for 5 years. But I kept going. Didn't listen to it, and I just kept on pointing it out as I saw it, as it got worse and worse. And after I saw The Last Jedi, and what they did to Luke Skywalker, I knew we were in for trouble, because I'm like, that is the hero of generations. That is number one. That is the number one IP. And they just decided to make him drink soy milk out of a boob for kicks. And they thought it was funny. And they thought they were being cute, and they didn't realize like the backlash it would cause, and they tried to minimize that backlash. And that's where I have the big problem, because I've been a member of fandom my entire life. This is the one thing that brought people together, and now they're using it as a tool of division, and now it's so obvious. I mean, I'm grateful. You know, Rings of Power coming out was such garbage, and it was so predictable. I'd love to say I was this Nerdstradamus, but it's the same story over and over again, being told, two different ways. So it's not just film, it's streaming. So yes, there's the woke agenda foundation, but there's also the regular bad stuff, the corporatism, ego, narcissism, hubris, greed, and it's taken something that we loved and destroyed it. And this, I know we come to these cons and things are going great right now, but like it's ending, and I'm trying to keep it from ending, because I like these little. I think our creature comforts are what bring us together, and I think it's important for a society, and for it to tell us that we can't have that anymore is bullshit. So that's where I come from. Before I meander on too long.
I got mine, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'll take it from the artistic standpoint. I think the reason television sucks today, are we using the word suck or?
Garbage.
Garbage,
Whatever
I'm sorry.
works for you.
The reason why movies and television are garbage today, it's basically we've lost the ability to tell stories. We've been telling stories for millennia, and we've forgotten how to do it. We've somehow become so arrogant to say that the way we've told stories in the past no longer apply today. And I'll just sum it down to this idea. A story is one that you connect with. We are all people. Doesn't matter where we come from, what we look like, our skin color, whatever. We are all people. We've all had our struggles in lives, our journeys in lives. And the stories that connect with us, the movies that connect with us, the TV shows that connect with us, are the ones that where the characters have struggled the same way we have, and at the same time, the characters we connect with are the ones that we can identify with, and it seems like we've just lost a hold of that, and somehow we've had to say that in order for me to feel represented on the screen, someone has to look like me. Well, the reality is that they don't have to look like me. They have to have walked the same journey I've walked. And then now I can connect with that character, with that show, with that story, and see where that journey goes. And a lot of times those journeys are ones of hope, ones of inspiration, sometimes ones of tragedy. But those are the stories we connect to. And it feels like nowadays that stories and movies, they're more about preaching to us, basically telling us why we're bad people, why we are imperfect, and more or less shaming us. And even worse, sometimes it's just so pedestrian storytelling. You mentioned Rings of Power. It just felt like characters go from one point to the next point, to the next point, to the next point. And all we're doing is following people on a journey, people who look like us, and have really nothing to say. And I think, their classics are classics for a reason. And like I said, it's because we connect with them.
There you go.
Good job. Okay. Yeah, to play off your point, I think one of the biggest problems with people that are trying to tell stories is that they haven't actually lived a life, where they actually have experience. There's a really good episode of Deep Space Nine where Jake and Sisko are going on this sailing through space instead of taking warp speed. And Jake wrote this story, and he's like, "Dad, can you read it?" And he's waiting for his dad to read it, and it's about, the Maquis and the Badlands, and this might be way too nerdy for some of you guys, but one of the things that Sisko says is, he's like, "Jake, you're writing about things that you don't know." And I feel like today, everyone just wants that quick buck, like, "Oh yeah, I'll make a Marvel movie for you and get $100 million, because who's gonna say no to $100 million? Whereas someone like Quentin Tarantino, he's like, "No, I'm stopping at 10 films, and then I'm done, because that's what I have in me, and I want it to be an event when I go to a theater." And so when he's telling stories, it's one, to tell a story. Quentin Tarantino has lived a pretty extraordinary life. If you go and watch any of his, interviews where he talks about the stuff and the people that he's met. And in my personal opinion, I would rather watch a movie from the 1950s than now, because those people, just the acting, the quality of storytelling, not relying on special effects. And it's so well done. Like, one of the best movies is The Sound of Music. That movie has everything. And you watch it and it's like, oh my gosh, this movie's rated G. Like, my boyfriend had never seen it, and he woke up when the Nazis showed up. He's like, "What the hell are you watching?" And I'm like, "It's The Sound of Music." He's like, "I don't know there's Nazis in it." I was like, "What? How is that?" But that's such a good movie. And you can skip through some of the music if you don't want to listen to musicals and some dancing and all that. But if you just look at the story, like, when the Nazis show up, there's no cursing, there's no violence, but you could just feel the tension in the room. And that's the storytelling from, us with the knowledge of what was going on at that time, and then the way that everyone acted with each other. It was such a good, representation of, I guess, the tension of the time and that fear. And so when you watch that movie, there's love, there's compassion, there's family, and then there's the will to survive. So it's a very good story. Have we gotten anything even close to that within the past decade? In my opinion, no. But when you want, I guess, art, or you want something that's going to be, somebody has a story within it that they want to tell, I look to Wes Anderson and Quentin Tarantino, because I know even if Wes Anderson gets a little crazy with, the kookiness of his movies, I'm like, at least it's art, and it's different, and he's not selling out. And I think that's a really big problem now, is because people are selling out. I was at Boston Fan Expo, and I was talking to Q, and he told me I needed to get a life because I really went into Star Trek lore and how they fucked up Picard. Because he asked me, he's like, "Oh, do you like Picard?" And I was like, "Hate it with every fiber of my being." And he was like, and I went on this rant, and he was like, "Yeah, you need to get a life." And I was like, "Ah." If they just watched the show, and he even told me, he's like, "Yeah, they didn't watch the show." And a bunch of people that work on Picard, they know that the writers, all they had to do was go back. It's like, guys, you're getting paid millions of dollars. Take a week off work. It's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix. Just sit there and watch all of Star Trek before you write the show, because everything that you want bad androids? Hello, lore exists. Who's Data's brother, and I could go on and on and on. But it's like, they don't have any life experience to actually tell these stories. They've never felt anger, or true, malicious anger. They've never been around somebody that purely hates them. They've probably never been in love, because when I watch those stuff on TV, I'm like, what the hell is this? This is like teenagers texting kind of shit. And then really never had tragedy except they probably lost their phone charger. Like, I feel like that's their biggest tragedy when you're watching these new TV shows and movies. So no life experience, no passion, no drive aside from getting a quick paycheck. So it's the selling out of it. So that's, I think, why movies suck. Your turn, Dante.
Shit, how do I follow that? I mean, I think Gary kind of nailed it on the head when he said, it is a weird marriage of wokeism and corporate pandering. It bugs me that studios have traded storytelling for pushing agendas and social nonsense, right? When I think about kind of like the movies I loved, right? Like some of you guys might know this movie. It's a little movie from the 70s called The Warriors, right? Yeah. So The Warriors, like there's probably maybe 10 minutes of dialogue in the whole fucking film. But that movie, to this day, I could watch it and have the same feelings I felt when I watched it back in, I am dating myself, in the 80s or late 70s, right? So I think what's happening right now is studios are listening too much to social media. And what they're doing is they're taking these bad ideas and transforming them into the media that we consume today, right? I mean, let's not even look at movies. I mean, look at, a show like She-Hulk, right? I mean, here we have a director or a writer who admitted she, number one, doesn't like the fans, but number two, doesn't know the material, right? And so what does Marvel do? They hire her, because of course, right? So I feel like telling stories with heart has been lost, right? If we think about all the movies that we loved, or even just think about the choices of movies we had, even in the 80s, right? We had so many choices and so many different directors with different styles, with different storytelling techniques, and we had so much to choose from. And now we have a formula, right? And now, worse than that formula, we have quotas that have to be met, right? Not only do you make a film, but now you have to have a certain amount of Black people, a certain amount of Asian people, a certain amount of gay people, a certain amount of trans people, instead of just making a story that's a story, right? Or making a movie based on a good story. So I think it's that formula that's killing Hollywood right now. I think that by not letting writers write a good story and giving it to an executive to decide how many races he could put into that story, I think we're losing what we loved about film in the first place, right? Because I mean, if I really thought about it, in the past 5 years, there's not one film that I really loved. There have been some films I kind of liked, but not a film that I'm going to be thinking about 15 years from now. God willing, I'm alive then, but but you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that has been done in recent times where I want to be thinking about years later. So anyway.
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash that like. Seriously, there's a lot of empty seats and there's a lot of people in the back. Please come and have a seat.
Yeah, a lot of seats up front.
This is your place, man. What a great showing. So, I recently saw a film from 1999 that I'd never seen before, and I was blown away at its entertainment value, at its filmmaking, the cinematography, the actors were just insanely good, right? And it's political. In a nutshell, that film was about the history of Mexico. It's called Herod's Law. And I was like, why haven't I seen this? I enjoyed myself so much, and I did a review, and I'm sharing and all that stuff. So those are the films that we want. We want to talk about for decades. Because I described that film as it's a Coen Brothers meets Mexican dark humor. And the Coen Brothers, we're still talking about Raising Arizona. Blood Simple. So I think that's really it. You can have your message if you want in there, like this director does, Luis Estrada, who I just cannot sing his praises enough. I'm like toning back and watching all his films. I'm almost caught up. He's got a new one, but they're just so he He's unapologetic. That's what it is. He says it doesn't matter what side you're on. I'm going to call you out. And in his films, but they're films. They're made so well. They're captivating. So it doesn't even matter what language. And I want to say the same thing also too with S.S. Rajamouli's RRR. It makes sense that one of his favorite directors is Mel Gibson. That Apocalypto to me is a much better representation of a Mayan superhero than Wakanda Forever will ever be. You know, I mean, that movie I could just watch and like no names, no stars. It was about this story of this guy trying to get back and save his lady, save his kid, and his whole world, everything. You guys saw it anyways. But we still talk about those movies. So, Chris, that's what I think.
I just want to correct something that Paulie said. He says there are a lot of empty chairs. There are actually not a lot of empty chairs. This room is packed and it's warm in here. So we should get the air conditioning on. But if you do want to come up, there are single empty seats places if you prefer to sit down. But standing room only, I love a panel like that. So thank you for that. I also want to comment, like, it used to be, it's not as if political messages did not exist in movies. They have from the beginning. There's a difference in how it happens today. Because the way political messaging used to be is that it wouldn't tell you how to think. It would make you think. It would make you think. I can tell you, there are movies that I've seen that have changed the way I look at things in the world. And those are incredibly powerful and impactful. What we're seeing today is movies that are telling you how to think. That is such a huge difference. And it's just, because I think that what it does is it can vilify certain members of the audience if you don't agree with the premise of the film, rather than leaving it open-ended and you choose how you're going to think about a certain thing. So that's a big change. The other thing is, I want to comment on something Alan was talking about seeing yourself in something. I do believe representation is important. It's boring to see all the same type of people in a movie. Having said that, I will say this, I think it's naive and sort of like small-minded if you can't identify with someone who doesn't look like you. All fiction, comic books, literature, movies, TV, video games, the whole point is to be able to identify with someone who isn't you, to see the world through their eyes. And so when I saw a movie like The First Alien, Ripley, okay, not the same gender, not as good looking for sure. I loved Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's performance in that. I liked her because she was the smartest person in the room. She didn't want to let Kane in, right? That was policy. In any case, I've seen so many movies. I don't want to see a movie that would look necessarily exactly like me. I like to see movies where I can see the world, a different story, whether it's a film like RRR and directed by S.S. Rajamouli, an amazing Telugu action film based on some real history, a little exaggerated. You can't use motorcycles to smack people in the face. It's practically a Marvel movie, but the point is that film is an opportunity to be in someone else's head, body, whatever, and see the world differently. And I think that teaches us empathy, and empathy is so important. So that was just something you inspired me to talk a lot. But I want to throw it out to you guys. You've all kind of gotten a little bit of taste. And I want to get to also your questions. Do people have questions and comments? Okay, it looks like we've got a lot of them. But anything, I'm just like anyone else, I commented on some things other people have said. Anyone want to like comment on just...
Actually, yeah, because I want to hit on what you just said about seeing yourself in a character. Yeah. So, look, let's be honest here, man. Hollywood has not always been kind to black folks, right? Like, if you really think about it, and I talk about it in my latest video on YouTube, where, you know, for years, Hollywood has dogged black people, right? I mean, we were either playing slaves most of the time, or thugs with jerry curls, or, you know, drug dealers. It was never in a positive light, right? And So I do get the understanding of wanting to see yourself in somebody, in a better character, in a more positive character. I completely understand that. There should be more representation in the right way. At the same time though, I never felt like I couldn't relate to Peter Parker, right? As a kid, especially as a teenage boy, I could always see myself in Peter Parker, regardless to him being white. So this idea of we have to see ourselves in every character is bullshit. And again, it comes back to pushing an agenda where, you know, it gives Hollywood an excuse to be lazy. It gives them an excuse to race swap characters so that they don't have to build original Black characters or build original Latino characters. It gives them a way out, right? A cheat code in a way. So being able to see yourself as somebody, and again, that is important for especially young people of color. We have to remember too that, you know, we have bonded with these characters because of who they are, not because of their skin color. So I get that. I see why people think that way, but in my own opinion, I don't believe that we have to look alike to see ourselves in somebody else.
The other thing I say that, and this is what we do at Film Thread, is we've been covering independent film, right? And it's great, like, Hollywood is great. If you want to work in Hollywood, that's fine. But the only barrier to entry in independent film is you. That's it, it's you. If you, you know what I always say? The best advice I give to filmmakers, actors, you want to be in movies or do stuff, hire yourself and do your own thing. This is a golden age right now for independent film. You can go make whatever you want, no one telling you what to do. And that to me has been the saving grace when you look at like the history of indie film. Indie film has just been much more open to different types of storytelling. Like I grew up watching Ultraman or Johnny Sacco and his giant robot. I didn't care that there were no white people in those shows. I wanted to watch that I could control a robot because that was cool. So yeah, I appreciate your comment, Dante.
Yeah.
I just want to jump off on that.
I'll just add on that.
Clerks is a good one too.
Yeah, of course.
I'll just add on that. Today, now more than ever, is the time for us who are not white to tell our stories, and I think that I think the world is becoming more receptive to that, and I think we need to stop feeling like Hollywood is the only way in which our stories are going to get told. Certainly, Hollywood is. Yeah, I mean, you know, okay, Warner Brothers' Crazy Rich Asians. You know, when that movie came out, I was like, oh my God, they're gonna ruin another Asian movie. And I remember sitting there going, God, I hope this movie's not bad. And fortunately, it was actually a good movie. And it had a broad appeal. But what Crazy Rich Asians did was now it began to open the door much more. Now you have everything everywhere all at once. You see a lot more, I'm seeing a lot more Asian filmmakers who are just wanting to get those stories told. And I see an audience much more receptive to listen to them. And I would just say, you know, as an encouragement to you, yeah, let's get off Hollywood. Let's start looking for small independent films of people of different cultures, diversity of stories. I saw a documentary recently about just the African struggle here in America. But one of the points they made was that, you know, in Africa, there are thousands of stories that have never been told. You know, why are we not mining those? Hollywood's good at that. Why not exploit African stories now? You know.
Well, didn't Disney? You went to D23.
Yeah, D23. This is a story that came out of D23 that no one's talking about. But there was this African in Nigeria, an African production company that wants to do animation. And they tweeted a simple tweet out. They said, we just started an animation studio, watch out Disney. And Disney got a hold of that. And Disney said, you got stories to tell? We're gonna give you the Disney engine behind it, the Disney animation engine behind it. And so this company is gonna tell their story. They're gonna write their stories, create their characters. And their first movie is one about basically the struggle of class. Those who are running things and people who are, you know, the working class running the engine behind it. And it's a very specific African story, and Disney's right there behind to tell that story and to get it out there. So yeah, so point taken. You know, diversify what you see in the movies. Yes.
All right. So to counter your point, Dante, I think it's safe to say I'm the youngest person on the panel here.
Nah.
So I grew up in the 90s, and it really, I see this meme and it's like, you know, racism isn't like, you're not born with it, you're taught it. So when I was growing up, all the black people in movies, it was Denzel Washington, he was the coach, and remember the Titans, he was a lawyer in Philadelphia. Samuel L. Jackson was a father in A Time to Kill. And so I never saw any of that unless I watched a movie that was specifically about racism, and I can't even think of the first movie I saw where there was like slavery. You know, that's just my 2 cents on it, but I was always taught, you know, just, you know, treat everyone equally. Unless they're an asshole to you, then you can be an asshole back, kind of thing. And even then, no, because you'll get grounded. But what I've noticed more and more in today's day and age, I mean, heck, even one of my favorite Starfleet captains, because he's not of a ship, but is Cisco, and he's black, you know? And that's something that I think is really important to show Star Trek to kids, because it's not all the problems within us as a human race has kind of been solved. It's when you encounter aliens and other races where there are those issues. And so that, you know, was a big part of my life growing up. And so now I'm seeing this, and you know, I get called a racist every single day on Twitter. I tweet LOL, and a certain part of Twitter loses its mind and calls me a racist for a week. And I'm like, there's not a racist bone in my body. Just because I treat everyone equally, that apparently now is racism, and saying, oh, you know, maybe this character shouldn't be this race because of X, Y, and Z. You know, maybe you shouldn't switch all of the gingers, even though they don't have souls, but maybe you shouldn't replace them with black people, you know. Yes, you got my reference.
South Garrett Cartman, South Park.
But yeah, so I think it's really an irritation to me, because it was not something that I ever grew up with. It was something that was introduced recently, and it kind of grinds my gears, because I'm like, you guys are literally creating this issue. Like, this wasn't an issue. There was always, you know, black characters in movies. Heck, look, even in Star Wars, there was Lando. Asian characters. One of my favorite movies growing up was Hero. And it's a great movie, and I'm just like, you guys are making these excuses, then you're not watching movies. And it blows my mind, but they just want to forget about all of that because it doesn't fit within their narrative and their agenda nowadays. And I mean, I've never seen somebody that looks like me in a movie. There's like no Portuguese people in movies, right? And but the character I related to was Luke Skywalker, because I grew up on a ranch. And I remember every single day watching the sunset, and you know, knowing Luke Skywalker was able to go from literally the middle of nowhere. Like, the town I'm from, there's no stoplights, and there's never gonna be stoplights. And it's, you know, one of the smallest towns in California, but if Luke Skywalker could leave, you know, Tatooine and go make something of himself, then so can I. And literally nothing in common with Luke Skywalker. Different planets, different, I mean, he's a boy, I'm a girl, he's got blonde hair, blue eyes, I clearly don't. But I could see myself in Luke Skywalker, or at least what I wanted to be in Luke Skywalker. So, play off your point in both ways, Dante.
That's fair, but I'm talking like as a majority. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Denzel's a great actor, right? But for every great role Denzel ever had, I mean, you know, I'm talking about like actors from the 70s, 80s, 60s. Those roles were very limited, you know. Like, yeah, towards the 90s, things started getting a little bit better. And, you know, you have Will Smith. Well, yeah, again, the one, right? Like, there's always like the one. And even then, she was considered the token, right? Like, by a lot of people. So don't get me wrong, I agree with you that there has been progress, sure. I mean, 90s and up, there have been better roles, you know, but before that, it was pretty bleak for a black actor trying to get a role playing something other than a stereotype. So.
Yeah, I think Anna brings up a really great point, and I say this all the time on my channel, is you know, with Latino creators, or people, you know, Latinos that are trying to see themselves, is that you're represented already. Everywhere you look in Star Wars, you're there. Every, whether it's or a film or a TV show, look, you're there. Now, are you telling stories just for your own people? Or are you telling stories for the universe? Are you telling stories for everyone? because she just said something really important. And that was my first superhero. Well, my first hero was Rocky Balboa, Luke Skywalker, Superman, then Danielson. And it wasn't until Danielson I was like, oh man, that guy's dark to me. Because Ralph Macchio was like, wow. I was like, is that guy Mexican? No, he's not. But y'all know what I mean. But the thing is that what's the presentation now? Because now you're in the room. You're in the room. If it's shit, excuse my language. If it's shit, then it's about the money, because they're not going to give you a season 2 or greenlight you, or they're probably going to fire you. So you know, that's what I always say, is that you guys we're in the room, we're represented now. It's presentation, right for the universe. One of the greatest Latino filmmakers, Luis Valdez, came from nothing. He says, I write for the universe. And so just to speak on that, and I think this generation too now just has different sensibilities too now. But that being said, they're reared too much on social media, so there has been stuff before 2010. So
Right. Just to piggyback on your point, as minorities, we have to work harder to produce better products, to prove ourselves. And people say that's unfair, but at the same time, we're making art. We should be working harder. We should be doing everything we can to put out a perfect product, to show ourselves, to be better than the white people.
I think we're killing it in anime, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the white people suck.
You know you did.
A bunch of them really suck. That's who's creating all this garbage right now. And they're the ones really feeding into this surface level, like really superficial identity politics thing, where they're just casting directors and actors right now. And that's got to be offensive as hell. It's like, oh, we're going to use your identity. We're not going to take your ideas. And I'm like, I can't tell you right now. I wish I could. That I've been contacted by people who have, when I said that you're being cast as a director, it was just a term I made up in a video, but like I got a ton of response to that. Like, yeah, I think I was, and it's fucked up, excuse my language, but they weren't happy about it. And that's the bottom line, is to create good art, you just need to make a story that connects people with people. I like Buffy. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite shows.
Agreed.
I have never been a teenage blonde female right, in my life, but I can identify with the human struggle of it. Sorry if you've heard this in a live stream before, but I identify with Gollum. All right, I do. As an addict, as a recovering addict, his addiction for the ring. I have never seen a better representation of addiction on screen than Gollum in Lord of the Rings. And it's sad and it's tragic, and I feel sorry for him. And I remember feeling sorry for him as a kid when I saw him in the cartoon, and now I know why. So that's what I go to stories for. I Superman and Spider-Man were my first heroes because they were adopted, not because they were white. That's you said you like Luke because you were on a ranch. That's where we connect with people, and we just need to keep making stories like that. I don't give a damn who's in them. Like, that's great. Like, cast the best people for the role, but you're not going to get art with quotas. You're just not. You're not going to get good art with quotas.
Al and I on our Film Thread show, our live cast, we talk about this kind of thing all the time. It's the question that we get the most from people watching our live streams is the movie woke? People want to kind of know that, or what percentage of it, or whatnot, or what is the checklist? When you can kind of feel the checklist when you're watching it, and it doesn't feel organic, I think that's kind of when you know. So. Do you have any comment on that, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to experience the checklist, watch Strange World, because you know for a fact that they were more concerned about getting diversity, getting every single type of person, of gender, sexual orientation. They have a three-legged dog, for crying out loud, and they packed it all into this. They were so focused on making sure that there was such a great diversity of character that they threw story completely out the window, and they had nothing in that story. And I will tell you that I have a very broad spectrum in terms of friends, in terms of politics, and no one who saw that movie liked that movie, because it just shows how bland storytelling can ruin a movie, you know, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, that I think actually, did anyone here familiar with Libs of TikTok on social media? It's like a teacher that is featured on Libs of TikTok wrote the script for Strange World. That's like how extreme it is. It's kind of cringe. Yes, it's pretty bad. Anyways, we've got about 20 minutes left, so why don't we throw it out for questions right here?
Hi everybody. This is the panel I'm waiting for all day. I'll be like, hey. I mean, I say I listen to you guys every single day. Gary, a lot of guys in work like you. I agree with like about 95% of everything you said, but I want to address the young lady about Quentin Tarantino. And hear me out. Don't be too quick to make Tarantino a hero. I like his movies, but I think I look at him very objectively because I love Jackie Brown. I really do. And I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But I do agree with Spike Lee. I think he uses the N-word a little too much. It's not like you can't use it, but after I've heard it 2 or 3 times, I get the point. You don't have to beat me over the head with it. And the reason I say this is because I think, you know, there are still people in the world that lived through that era, you know, hosed down and had dogs sicked on them that would call that word. And I think if Tarantino actually talked to these people, he maybe have a different perspective. Okay, I can't even say that. There are African Americans who, you know, I stand on, you know, because I can be in here and talk to everybody today that, you know, I wasn't there in the 60s. And I feel like if Tarantino movies, if he was referring to women as the B word in his movies, especially white women, I think he would have been got called on the carpet a long time ago and probably shut down. So, like I said, I don't see Tarantino as this, he's extremely talented, but when people quick to put him up on the pedestal, I gotta, you know, call it out. So that's just me. So, and I respect everything you guys said.
Fair point. Wait until the kids discover Martin Scorsese in Taxi Driver. Wait until the kids discover a movie more than 10 years old. Other questions, everyone? Let's right there.
Do I have to stand now?
Stand up. Yeah, that's
Whatever you
right.
want to do.
Get as many as I can.
So going off what you guys said, like I'm in the industry as well. So one thing I'm seeing is we have an IP and marketing problem. So there's so much content flooded in the marketplace, and the one reason why I think we're seeing horrible stories is that now you're hearing rumors of Apple trying to buy Disney. Like Coda and Severance isn't good enough. So they're seeing the IP that Disney has, they want to buy it up and then just flood that content out. So I think another problem with stories now is they're thinking about brand power and marketing before there's a film or a story. I think that's overall why stories are not what they should be.
You're right.
Good point.
Yes,
Good
very
point. Other questions? Yes.
I mean, really,
Sorry.
okay.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
Just really fast, you know, there's those great new shows that they don't know how to market, or they market like shit, and they're gone. And they're original, right? It's like, hey, let me go create something original. Why you gotta race swap? Well, they're there. But because of that, like just garbage marketing, or it's even activist marketing. That's not what the show's about. They get lost.
Yeah. There's, I mean, think about Counterpart. I love that show so much, and it got canceled quickly after 2 seasons. J.K. Simmons show, you probably never heard of it. Oh my gosh, one of the best shows I've ever seen. This first season was great. But now they're greenlighting everything because of what you said, because of the brand power. But they want that built-in audience, but then they want to reimagine it for the world we live in today. And I don't. What does that even mean? Like, if you want brand power with Lord of the Rings, for example, you make a Lord of the Rings show. And if you know anything about Tolkien, you know, Anna talked about homework. Harve Bennett. There's a great story about Harve Bennett before he took on Star Trek 2. He didn't know anything about Star Trek. Guy didn't know anything. Big time producer. You know what he did? He watched all the Star Trek, and he learned Star Trek. So if you take on something like Lord of the Rings, you'll learn Lord of the Rings. And if you learn Lord of the Rings and you learn Tolkien, you would know that you could put plenty of diversity and inclusion in his story and brought new light to it if they'd done any kind of work, which they didn't do. So a lot of it is laziness too. They want that built-in audience, but they don't want to do the work to keep that audience around. What they end up doing is that what they don't care about is like how the audience feels. Like if the audience feels attacked, then whether that's reality or not, it doesn't matter, you've lost them.
Yeah, it's just bizarre to me that Hollywood seems to have this strategy of attacking the fans. There was a recent campaign, Domino's Pizza did a campaign where they talked about, I think we know our pizza's garbage. It's bought by drunk college kids. And they actually did, you can look up this video on YouTube where they say, we're gonna improve it, we know our pizza's bad. No restaurant would say, would blame the customer for why the food is bad. So I don't understand why Hollywood thinks that's a marketing strategy. More questions.
Actually, there's a hand over there.
Chris,
Where?
Yeah, right
Can I
there.
get mine?
Right there. Yes, you.
Yeah.
First of all, I have a very loud voice, so you will be able to hear me throughout the room.
Cool.
I think one of the big problems with independent films is that the first film that a new filmmaker makes is usually a horror film. So they're all trying to scare up the same audience. They're competing with each other. And what we really need is a new genre that uplifts, that inspires, that makes the audience feel that anything is possible. And that's what my goal is. And that's what I'm working with on other filmmakers. A whole new genre of film.
I think those are called sports films.
Just to comment on that, yeah, what happened to stories of hope? What happened to stories of inspiration? What happened to romance? You know, for some reason, these are no longer valued stories, and the studios don't want to do anything about that.
That was the first thing. A lot of people like to say Last Jedi was the thing that sort of threw Star Wars up. I could not stand The Force Awakens.
Thank you.
That movie, the way that they killed Han Solo was bad. It was terrible. It's not the way that you want to get. You want to have a legacy character go off into the sunset. The whole point is a good death scene like that isn't even about the character. It's about the people that love that person. Han, Luke, and Leia not being reunited in Star Wars in the Star Wars sequels should be a crime. That was awful. I mean, you contrast that with the death of Spock in Star Trek II. The people he loved were surrounded by him in his moment of death. It's an incredible death scene and an amazing send-off for the character of Spock, who they brought back in the next movie. But
they didn't know that at the time.
yeah, they didn't. They didn't know that at the time. They did not know that at the time. But yeah, like to me, there was no romance.
They shot the scene in secret.
Chris, I have a question.
Oh, I'll get to it real quick, but I just want to say also, like, the thing that I did notice from Force Awakens, there was no romance in The Force Awakens. Where were the love interests? I mean, people forget that the original Star Wars was inspired by Luke Skywalker saw a hologram of a girl he fell in love with, a girl from a hologram. Found out later it was his sister, not his fault, but still, that's how he got swept up.
You just ruined your argument there. Obi-Wan could have said something.
Yeah, Obi-Wan could have
said something.
Yeah, right here, question.
My question is because you all work on the back end, meaning that you're responding to things that are already out in the atmosphere, sort of trying to promote. So what I've been trying to do is on the front end is try to understand why there's this fascism of thought that leads to no creativity, and why can't we not get more young people to start moving in this direction of really forcibly pushing the envelope to get the industry to move in these directions. And I'm married to someone in the industry, so we have this conversation all the time, but one or two people can't really shove the envelope in this direction. What we need is everyone to really push in this direction and get more fan-based content out there that's supported by the industry.
Well, I can hit that one.
Just a real quick, I would say that most, and no disrespect to young people here, most of them are media illiterate, and they don't know the history of film. They haven't seen movies more than 10 years old, and I think that it's important because the point of reference I have with many of my friends, we've all seen a lot of the same movies. We've all seen these classics. We understand why do they resonate with us. So I think that is partly the issue. And then when they discover that, wow, people acted differently back in a certain time period. I remember being shocked when I was a kid in the 70s, watching old movies from the 30s and 40s. And what I learned from watching those movies is the way to calm a woman down was to just slap her in the face. That's all you gotta do. You just slap a woman in the face and she calms down. I was shocked in the 70s watching that, right? A lot of film noir movies did that, okay. Then, we don't do that, right? But like back in those movies, that was something that was so you've got to understand that it's what do they call that term? Is it presentism, where you judge everything from the past based on your values in the present? And I think it's sort of a fruitless venture, but just being more media literate and educated in the history of film and important movies, and recognizing that, yeah, those movies in the 30s and 40s were really freaking weird. But here we go.
Just really quick. To answer your question, to be honest with you, the only way for this to change is Hollywood needs to hurt. Right? They need to hurt. Like, people need to stop giving their money and paying their money for the story. When Hollywood doesn't feel the pain, they're going to change that shit up real quick. You know what I mean? The other thing is, start hiring writers again and stop hiring activists.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Or start teaching people how to write.
Yes.
We need to cultivate more talent, but the talent also needs to realize, like, Hollywood isn't it isn't the go-to space anymore. You don't need it, especially if you're like, what I do. I cover media, so I'm like alternative media. Like, you can do that right now as a hobby. You can start it right now, and there's no way they can compete against that. And I mean, like, if you go in it, like I've always told people, go into it like a hobby, like you're having fun. If it takes off, great. If it doesn't, it's like having a band that you don't have to deal with 4 other guys who won't show up. Or guys who right?
There's a little bit of good news with that fascism of thought. I love that. The best director of the New York Films Critic Association, whatever they're called, went to SS Rajamoul for RRR. Best cinematography, Top Gun. What they're saying is, these non-woke films, these amazing films, they recognize that you guys love them all, right? You guys, we get to dictate what we want to see with our dollars, because they're business. So there is a little bit of good news there.
Well, yeah, the bottom is hitting right now because the money's drying up. I wish it was because everybody realized at once that maybe we're being too divisive and we should do the right thing, but no, it's because everybody's going broke. Right? But we also need more people who do work in the industry who feel differently to speak up. It's very important. So many of them reach out to me and others here saying, "Oh, I totally get what you're saying, man, but I can't say anything. I'm gonna get fired." Well, that sucks. That's a crappy job to be in. You know? And it's not like you're saying anything radical. Okay, we're just like, hey, maybe there should be some balance in the world, maybe, and in art. And maybe, you know, the worst part about writing is even the good ones are churning out garbage right now because they're afraid to write. They're self-editing, they're worried if they're gonna get canceled, and for good reason, because they might. So that needs to change too.
Let me just add to that. Go to San Francisco, visit the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Yes.
You follow the story, it goes to the entire history of Walt Disney, the man, and you'll realize that at every single point in his entire life, he could have lost everything. But everything he did had the potential to fail. And in Walt's mind is nothing he did could fail. Snow White, he had to beg for the last, like, I think $100,000 to complete Snow White. And a bank saw the unfinished print and said, "I believe in this project," and funded him the money. And you just go down the line of every single film, all the problems he had with the studio, and even to that damn theme park. He could have failed, he had gone bankrupt several times. He feared failure, and he knew the only way not to fail was to produce a product that the public liked and would give him money to see. And the problem with the studios today, especially Disney, is they don't fear failure. And until they have the fear of failure thrown in their face, they're not going to change. And they're not going to see that we are the important ones, we are the customers, and we are the ones that are going to fund these people.
And real quick, I know there's some filmmakers actually in this room, and I think it's really important that you have an opportunity, a golden opportunity now with indie film. Okay, we've seen a lot of these like big movies that have gone to theaters, like whatever you think about the movie Bros, that was not for a broad mainstream audience. But if that movie had opened on 300 screens, it would have been huge. If it was made for $2 million, made $10 million, big hit. And I think it's thinking that movies that normally would appeal to a smaller audience, making those on a larger level, don't really succeed. Another thing, if you were at our panel earlier today, Future Indies You Must See, we showed a trailer for a movie called Man Baby.
Oh, God.
It's a terrible film, but it proves that anyone in this room could make a movie. You can make a movie. We have time for like 2 more questions. We're gonna start right here, and then we'll go there. Okay, right here, sir, what's your question?
Lol.
I don't know if you remember me, Chris, but I met you years ago. So I hear people say all the time, oh, you could never make a movie like Blazing Saddles these days.
Yeah.
You know, people are too... I actually think Blazing Saddles, I don't think it's a racist movie. I think it's an anti-racist movie.
It is.
If you pay attention to it. And I want to be a filmmaker myself. And I agree, you never want to divide your audience. But what if you feel like there's too much hatred and racism and bigotry in the world right now, and as an artist, you feel like it's your duty to like fight against that with your art, but how do you do it in a way that's...
But
like,
I can tell you right now, just based on what you just said right now, most black people I know love Blazing Saddles, right? Like, we love pretty much all of Mel Brooks' films. Mel Brooks is hilarious, and the thing is, you can have those racial jokes, and look, God damn it. No, really, because I just wish people understood, man, when it comes especially to comedy, black people know when it's coming from a bad place, right? We know when it's coming from a good place, we know it's coming from a bad. You could tell, Bill Burr tells racist shit all the time, and black folks love him. He's hilarious, right? Because we know he's not coming from a bad place, right? There's this misconception that you can't be funny anymore, right? You can't tell that kind of racial humor anymore. That is complete bullshit. You can still tell those stories. But yeah, you're right. In our woke culture, the loud majority are going to get on Twitter and shame it, right? But the majority of people will go watch it.
Another quick comment. I think if you only read social media, you would think that everyone is incredibly racist. Then I go out in the real world and I smile at strangers and walk my neighborhood and I think, I don't see it. I don't see it. So I don't think you can really change someone's mind necessarily with like, and also if someone is overtly racist, they're not gonna stop being that from watching a movie. Truthfully, right? Like they will, you know what, you get back what you put out in the world. You're not going to change, but you don't change hearts and minds by calling strangers that on social media. And I think social media has too much become the thing that people see as the real world. Sorry, Gary, you had a comment, right?
No, I think we need the anti-woke Blazing Saddles to take the piss out of everything, because that's what comedy does. All right, and comedy's dead right now. That's the thing that's been hurt the most. And maybe what you were just saying was give the comedian the benefit of the doubt, like where their heart is, because they're just there to make you laugh, and they'll do anything to do it. And I go to some raunchy, horrible comedy, but it's funny, and we need that in the world. And the fact that Hollywood's missing the comedy right now, I mean, you were talking about romance, I would say it's equally as bad missing the comedy. Like that's one of the biggest parts. You know, like we had a kind of a mini golden age of comedy in the early 2000s with like Dodgeball. And, you know, like those are great movies.
Anchorman.
Team America.
And we can't make them. And you know what? Anchorman had a message in it. And it's a great movie, and it had a message in it, and it was done in a great way. And that's how you get across to people. Make them laugh, take the piss out of it. It's not that serious. Life isn't that serious. Have a little fun.
Look at Donnie's Bar. Oh, sorry, just look up Donnie's Bar Mitzvah. That's it.
Donnie's Bar Mitzvah. The last question right here. You've been. Unfortunately, we got. What's your question?
So basically, do you think, like, since a lot of us are going to be having children in the future, do you think it's up to us to educate, like, anyone who has kids, like, with these movies that we grew up with, so they have like a mind of like how movies are made and what the message is compared to like.
Don't show your kid the Disney trilogy.
There you go. Don't show your kid, or like, should we show them like Terminator or?
Well, that's a great question. I just as a guy who's like covered movies for a really long time, and I have 2 grown children, I made sure that it's really age appropriate when your kids are ready, and it's not necessarily, you know, my son, he was not into horror. My daughter loves horror. Right? She discovered H.R. Giger after seeing the first Alien. Might have been a little too young. She was like 13, but you know, she was into that. She loved it. She loved blood and guts. So you know your kids better. You know your kids better than anyone. When they're ready for certain types of movies, introduce them to it, and you need to be, you know, not just literate with, I think, classics, but also classic movies. It's important. It's a point of reference. and they all have lessons we can learn. Unfortunately, yes, question way in the back. Yeah, get that. That'll be the last question.
Thank you. I just wanted, first of all, thank you, because I think it's a very important topic that you are raising and discussing. I wanted to talk about diversity in stories. So you talked a lot about how nowadays we care more about like diversity rather than the story, which is more important for a movie, for when you make a movie, right? But don't you also think that now we're living in a completely different world, and we talked about like how people go on Twitter and just like cancel everybody basically. So, and you say you said something like we actually vote with our dollar and we decide what we want, but on the other hand, people also, like us, right? We also hate, and we create this cancel culture. And if producers don't put certain races, certain groups, minorities into movies, then we are going to hate this production. This is what I'm trying to say. I hope I made myself clear.
You did.
Not really.
So it fosters the division. So what we are experiencing tons of racism from Hollywood right now by dividing everybody into these little groups and separating. I had these really old-fashioned parents who told me to see things without color. I know that's a bad statement now. I don't give a shit. So I see people getting divided over and over again. I just read that paperwork you gave me.
Right, yeah.
Holy crap. It's just the White Writers Guild of America. It is LGBTQ plus how to turn legacy characters or reinterpret them in a new light instead of, why don't you just focus on creating new ones, like making new stories. And then it goes right down the line. Like every race, gender, they said Latinx. Sorry about that. That was them, not me.
Yeah, Gary, great question. I think what he's saying and what I'm feeling as well too is that it's the same world as it was before. I know it's gonna sound crazy, but we all get up, we all go to work, hopefully. We all eat, we all say hello to people. Do you get what I'm saying? We have so much in common with each other. And what's different is that they're telling you that we don't.
Yep. Over and over again.
Yes. Through social media, and it's so powerful, guys. It's so powerful, and that's why I say just do your stories, but just look beyond that stuff. Because at the end of the day, I go out and I say hello to my neighbors of all different colors in the neighborhood I'm in. But that's really that's my just adding to your conversation, and I would say as much as big a speaker that they have, they're a very small population. They're a minority. They're just in positions of power, and they have a loud piece of them. So.
I'll make one sentence. Respect people who you don't agree with. Listen to what they have to say and consider whether they're right or wrong. And I hope that respect passes on to them, to where they respect the fact that they don't agree with you either. Because we need to bring back healthy debate in America today.
Alan, have you hit the internet? That's an impossible dream. I really want to thank everybody on this panel. Paulie, Dante, Anna, that Star Wars girl, Alan, Gary Beekler from Nevada, Chris Gore from Filmset. And I want to thank all of you. Great panel. Thank you so much. Now go make your own damn movies. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Finish him.
Oh, my jeans.